Hi, I'm Dr. Ethan Johnson, Health Officer for the Florida Department of Health in Seminole County, member of the Healthy Seminole Collaborative, and your Healthy Seminole Show host. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, stigma is a social phenomenon that involves negative attitudes or beliefs about others, typically based on defining characteristics, such as health conditions that are perceived to be contagious, dangerous, or incurable. There are different types of stigmas. Many adults with mental illness will not receive help because they fear stigma. In today's show, we will discuss more about mental health stigmas, the effects, and how they can be reduced. All right, joining us today is Mr. George Margolis, President and CEO of Recovery Connections for Central Florida, and we're excited to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do at Recovery Connections?
Sure. Recovery Connections is a recovery community organization, an RCO for short. And here in the state of Florida, there's only a handful of us. And what that really means is that the organization grew out of a grassroots effort to determine what kind of services to provide. And we started that effort back in 2019. It's evolved. We're a nonprofit organization, so all the services we provide are free of charge to the participants. It's paid for through grants that we get from the Department of Children and Families, Seminole County government as well as Orange County government and a number of other foundations and such. The specific services we provide, we have a 24/7 hotline, which is available 365 days a year, where our peer support specialists who are certified by the Florida Certification Board provide navigation services to individuals with substance use disorders and that are looking for resources, whether it be a treatment center, a detox, sober living, food sources, things of that nature. And so we provide that through the hotline. We also have a facility on the border of Seminole and Orange County, about a 6,500 square foot facility that we house peers, and today we're up to 26, 27 full-time staff members. So it's really grown quite a bit in the last 2 years that we've been offering services. So an individual could come in, set up an appointment, or just walk in the door and get those same navigation services right then and there.
Also, Recovery Connections is really a one-stop shop really for folks looking to get their lives together, really.
It is a one-stop shop, but having said that, we have gone mobile. So we have 4 of our peers that take their services out into the community. So we have relationships with, for instance, the Sharing Center here in town, in the county. We have relationships with Shepherd's Hope, University Behavioral Center, Aspire Health Partners, and we bring our services out to them on a weekly basis. And what's really good about that is we actually are getting to people before they get out of a treatment center to help them figure out where they're going to go and how they're going to manage that release from a treatment program. And so we really do provide one-stop shopping, so to speak, and we're the only recovery community organization that serves Orange and Seminole, Brevard, and Osceola counties right now.
Wow. So I have to ask, since you guys are so ingrained in the recovery community and know so many people are connected in so many places, I'm sure you all have a really strong understanding of stigma. So I guess I'm wondering, how does stigma, what role does stigma play for individuals struggling with opioid or substance use disorder?
I think it plays a very significant role. I know I'm personally a person in long-term recovery, not having had a drink in over 40 years, and I know that in my career, over time, my professional career, it hampered my professional growth. And I think that what we see with stigma is that individuals are hampered in their recovery journey because they're afraid to basically speak about what their problems are, because they fear the stigmatization and how that will impact their career, their lives, and it does impact the recovery journey that's being created based on where they come from and the stigma that's associated with it. So I think it has a very big impact on it. We still see it too.
Right. And so what type of, when you say impact on the recovery journey, you know, how does that change the way that I seek treatment when this type of stigma is impacting?
Well, that's a good question. So if it's a professional individual that might be worried about their career, they might choose a different path for treatment as opposed to, because of the stigmatization, they might choose a little bit more of a subtle approach to recovery, as opposed to what they might really need, which is a little bit something more direct. And so I think we see that. It is definitely impacting from a job standpoint. So we have individuals that come in. We refer to the folks that come to our organization as participants. And so the participants coming in, they're challenged all the time with it. You know, can they find housing? Can they find work? And those kinds of things. So it does impact the journey. And part of this recovery capital score that I mentioned, we look at the internal and the external attributes that an individual is facing, and we score that. As I said, it's an evidence-based model that is used, and based on that, we develop recovery plans, and the plans will differ from individual to individual based upon where they're at a particular point in time, and that could be impacted by the stigma that they're experiencing in their lives. And it could be from family, it could be from associates and the like. So,
interesting. So I have a two-part question to kind of wrap it up. On one side, what can social service organizations, folks that just encounter people in the community that may or may not be in recovery, maybe they're related to someone in recovery, but what can those organizations do to decrease the amount of stigma associated with seeking out care, seeking treatment? And then the second half of that is, what can family members do?
Well, I think both the community, the organizations like yourself and other civic organizations, it's education in my mind. The more education that is provided to the public as to the stigmatization impacts, the better off I think we are.
Excellent. So more education and really normalizing this conversation in day-to-day life. It's not.
I think normalizing is a good way to put it. I know when I was coming up through my sobriety, it was not a normal conversation. Today it's more normal. It's getting more and more normal, partly because it's becoming more and more fatal. I mean, the folks with opioid issues or folks that are just taking an Adderall to get through their study for their final exams that are getting laced with fentanyl, it's becoming more of a problem. So education, I think, is critical to it.
Well, George, thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate you sharing all this knowledge with us.
Thank you for having me, and appreciate you planning to come out and see what we do for Recovery Connections, and look forward to it.
And now we're actually going to go over to Myrna, who is at Recovery Connections, who's going to talk with one of your peer specialists.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I'm here with Jillian Audit. She's a peer specialist for Recovery Connections, and she's going to be sharing her story. Hi, Jillian.
Hi.
Welcome to Healthy Seminole. And I wanted to ask you, first of all, your position as a peer specialist. What is it that you do? Tell us more.
So my job as a peer specialist is to provide my experience, strength, and hope with others. Basically what I do is I sit down with people, I help them to understand that we're both on the same level. We are both addicts trying to recover from substance use disorder.
Recovery Connections, this is Jill. How may I support you today?
I want them to feel comfortable and understand that we're on the same level. I'm no higher than them, they're no higher than me. We've probably both done the same things or even worse. And just to help them feel comfortable and know that they're talking to somebody who's gone through the same thing as them, helping them with what their immediate needs are, giving them those resources, and then providing my experience with substance use disorder and how I've gotten to where I'm at today.
Jill, tell us about your personal experience, a little bit about your story.
So I started using substances when I was 17 years old. I had a few traumatic incidents when I was younger, and it led me to seek out something to escape from those emotional problems I was feeling. I got into heavier usage in high school with drinking and smoking, kind of hanging out with that crowd. After high school, I started using stronger substances and drugs. I ended up getting pregnant at 17 with my first daughter. That is the only time, every time I've been pregnant is the only time I have stopped using drugs. And then around in 2022, I found, I had a friend who had told me about NA and what they do there. I did not want to go. I didn't want to be around those people, is what I would say back then. And I went to my first meeting, and it was probably one of the best days of my life. It was amazing. I had people hugging me, and just how loving and supportive these people were who have gone through the same things as I have, and were able to share those struggles openly and not be embarrassed about it. So I started going to meetings more often. I had a few relapses here and there. I actually had many relapses here and there. I didn't quite get it at first. Ever since I went to treatment, I've been clean. So I have about 2 years of clean time now. So I think seeing firsthand what addiction does to people, how fast it can take somebody away from you, showed me and scared me, because I didn't want to be away from my children. I don't want to die. So I was able to learn the tools and understand why I am the way I am, how to cope with those problems that I feel emotionally. I was able to learn all of that in treatment, and it was hard to do. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be away from my children, but it is the best thing I could have done for myself.
So Jill, were you affected by stigma during this period of time?
With stigma, I dealt with that mostly throughout my family. I never used with other people. I was very isolated when I was using harder substances. So I didn't really lose friends. They didn't really know what was going on until I came into recovery. But my family watched it, and they did not understand. They were there for me. They did not kick me out. I was never on the street, but they couldn't understand why I was choosing to do this, why I was choosing drugs over my children. And today I've been able to do a self-discovery and find out why I chose to use drugs to cope with my feelings.
So tell us what led you to your recovery.
My children are a very big part of why I am here today, why I continue to fight every second, every minute, every day. Not only them, but me as well. Like I said, I wanted to live. I want to live, I want to be alive, I want to live happy, I want to live a normal life. And after watching my boyfriend pass away from an overdose, I couldn't do that to my family. I couldn't put my children through that and have them wonder why I would choose a substance over them. So I took all of that, all the people around me, and I added that into my own reasoning for myself. And that's what's kept me clean today. That's why I continue fighting, and I spread the message to other people so that they can do it too.
So in closing, do you have a message, a service, or resource that you would like to share with those that are going through something similar during this time?
My biggest resource is going to be the place I work at, Recovery Connections. What we do here it's unexplainably amazing. Every peer specialist here is an addict in recovery. For people to be able to come to a place where they feel comfortable to sit down with someone who knows almost exactly what they're going through, has felt the same way they've felt, to sit down with them and for them to be able to see what they're capable of, that they can be in the same position as us one day. I wish that when I was in active addiction, I had a resource like this. I have never heard of a place like Recovery Connections. And when I found out about them, I started as a participant here, and I just worked my way up. I wanted what these peer specialists had. I wanted to live that way. I wanted to spread this message. I felt like this was my calling, was to go help people.
So thank you so much, Jillian, for sharing your such inspiring story and for sharing the resources that will benefit so many people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to spread my message.
Joining us now is Ms. Marnie Stallman, President and CEO of the Mental Health Association of Central Florida. We're happy to have you here today. She's going to be speaking with us briefly about stigma and mental health. But first, could you tell us a little bit about the Mental Health Association of Central Florida?
Well, thanks for having us today. We're wonderful partners with Seminole County and the Health Department. And the Mental Health Association has actually been here in Central Florida serving the community for 78 years.
Wow.
We are the primary advocacy organization and also the Guardian Advocate training organization for the 9th and 18th Judicial Circuits, which includes, of course, Seminole County. And we operate a free and charitable clinic for individuals that are seeking mental health services and resources, regardless of age, that don't have health insurance. And we want to make sure that they're getting the services that they need. We're part of the Florida Association of Free and Charitable Clinics, and we enjoy many collaborative partnerships and relationships with other organizations here in Central Florida.
Wow, excellent. Thank you so much. Very involved in the community right here in Seminole County. So could you speak to us a little bit just about what is stigma and how that relates to mental health?
Well, in a nutshell and in the simplest form, stigma is when we feel that there's something that is impeding us from talking about what's going on with us. And that can come from feelings that we have internally that get generated on our own, but most often it's from feelings and behaviors that are generated from other people towards us, making us feel inhibited, making us feel as if we can't speak to what the issues are that are occurring with us. And oftentimes that causes people to isolate and to not seek service and to not seek treatment, particularly when it comes to our mental health and well-being. There is quite a lot of stigma that has evolved for tens of 20 decades of years, really, regarding how we talk about our mental health. Oftentimes, individuals will feel that if they share what's going on with them behaviorally or emotionally, that will impede other people's feelings about who they are, what they might be able to accomplish. And they feel if they share that, it won't be greeted with a way for assistance and help and support. And so we find oftentimes they don't talk about it.
Considering how the stigma has evolved in this mental health realm, as well as just some of the new challenges, how would you say the impact of stigma on individuals seeking help, mental health, how would you say that has changed? And given that change, how would you say we could maybe do some work to help alleviate some of that?
So leading up to just recently, I would say in the last 2 to 4 years, stigma really created a barrier for people seeking mental health assistance, even for very small things like anxiety or situational depression. Because of course, as you are very well aware, there's a difference between a mental health condition and someone who has a mental illness. And oftentimes, people that have a mental health condition, something that changes what I like to refer to as our activities of daily living. Does it interrupt our sleep? Does it interrupt how we eat? Does it interrupt our relationships with people that are close to us or in our work or school settings? Those conditions all coupled together that are persistent or exist for more than a 2 to 4 week period are not just someone having a bad day, but someone that's really struggling with how to manage something that's impacting them. So when we see those activities of daily living start to be impeded or impacted in some way, that's when it's time to pay attention. And back to your question about stigma, what often happened for a very, very long period of time was that even voicing small issues about how they might be adjusting to a work change or a relationship change or an issue in school would result in someone feeling that they couldn't have that conversation because it wasn't a safe space to talk about. That, as I said, has changed over the last 2 to 4 years, and I think it began to change with COVID. And so over time, we've seen as we've moved out of the really isolating, debilitating parts that COVID as a pandemic caused us to experience, and now we treat it as just another kind of condition like a cold or flu that we just have to move through. The mental health component of it has really begun to be something that's talked about, and that has been a really good thing.
Well, I have to say, this has been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate your time here today. And now I believe we actually are going to cut over to Myrna, who is with some of your folks at the Mental Health Association, and we'll learn a little bit more.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
Thank you.
I'm here with Randy Rochelle, Reflections Program Coordinator for the Mental Health Association of Central Florida, and she'll be talking to us about what she does at the Mental Health Association and a little bit about her story. Hi, Randy.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about what is it that you do at the Mental Health Association?
Sure. So I am a certified peer recovery specialist. So I provide support groups, anything from grief support to sexual trauma to suicide prevention, men and women's group. We have a plethora of support groups that I provide, as well as I provide organizational partners with trainings, such as suicide prevention, such as burnout prevention, stress management. I've done one for another partnering company about co-parenting. So anything related in that mental health realm, I'm able to provide support and as trainings for.
So Randy, tell us about your journey through mental health.
So I think now looking back, it started very young. I do believe that mental health can be a generational thing and it can be passed down. So I do suffer from PTSD, depression, bipolar, and anxiety. And I am able to manage those today. They started at a very young age. I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't know why I was feeling upset. You know, your parents ask you, why are you sad right now? And I didn't have a response. I don't know. I just know that I'm sad. Or I don't know. I just feel really I didn't know the word anxious, of course, back then, but I don't know. I just feel real jittery and I feel uneasy, right? And as I moved through that, I learned that I use the same coping skills as a lot of people that I'm aware of, and I turned to substances in order to manage that anxiety, that stress, that depression, because once you put substances into your body, they give you a euphoric feeling, right? So it took me out of that lower vibrational energy, that sadness, that anxiety, and it brought me up. It lifted me, and I no longer felt those, I wasn't suffering from those mental health conditions in the moment, right? But as soon as I would come off of the drugs, that anxiety was still there.
So were you affected, or have you been affected by stigma?
Oh, absolutely. I think when people are completely uneducated about things, they draw a bias to it really quickly, right? And not only in my mental health journey, but also in my substance abuse journey, I've heard many people say those people, right? The junkies or the crazies, right? I've been referred to as both, unfortunately. And I think a lot of times when people are uneducated about it, they get frightened about it, because they don't know what it is in its entirety, and then they draw judgmental conclusions about it. So that's why I'm grateful in my position. I get to go out to places in the community and provide these trainings and teachings and let people know it's an impulsivity control. It is something that's in our DNA and we can't control. However, we can find new coping skills to move forward from these things, and they don't have to be who we are anymore.
How did you manage the stigma during this period of time?
Through education, learning myself, and then transferring that message into the community, and teaching them. When people don't know what things are, they tend to draw negative biases to them. So I want to be able to educate, make it clear, make it understood, make things that are hiding and we don't talk about, talked about, right? And I also understand where they are, so that, and accept them for where they are, so that, because I want to be accepted for where I am too, and understand that they're just uneducated and don't know any better.
So what led you through the recovery process?
Sure. So being pregnant with my first child, I knew from the very beginning that his father did not want to be involved at all. And so I decided that I wasn't going to be a mother that had their child taken from them by the state. And so first, my recovery journey was solely based on being able to be present for my kid and making sure that he was okay. And then it turned into, as I started seeing the gifts of recovery flourish in my life and manifest in the physical form, then I was like, oh, I want this. I like this. So now it's for me, and it's for me to grow. If I see that I make an error today, I dig down deep. Where does that come from? What trauma did that stem from? And let me undo that. Do the work for myself. I'm constantly doing work. I now have 11 years in my mental health and recovery journey. So I still work on things today. It's a lifetime of things, and I want to be better with my last breath than I was before I began my last breath.
So in closing, can you provide a message or a resource where people could go where they're going through something similar than you have?
Sure, absolutely. So at the Mental Health Association of Central Florida, we have our Connections program. We provide the services, we do the legwork. You ever call your insurance company and you get 5 dead ends on referrals? We do the legwork. We make sure they're gonna cover X, Y, and Z that you're looking for, and then we provide you with a resource. We also have a free and charitable clinic, so that boundary that some people face with financial challenges, or we don't have insurance. If you don't have insurance, you get services provided by us for free. Med management, psychiatry, and therapy, all for free. And so that doesn't have to be a barrier for people anymore.
So thank you so much, Randy, for sharing your beautiful story. It's so inspiring, and congratulations on your 11 years of recovery and for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor.
Mental health stigma prevents individuals from seeking help and accessing appropriate treatment. Talking openly about stigmatized conditions, providing support, and educating yourself and others can also help reduce stigma. Other ways to contribute to reducing stigma include: know the facts about mental health conditions and substance use disorders. Be aware of your attitudes and behavior. Treat people affected with respect. Choose words carefully. We can start conversations that lead to healing. Educate yourself and others. Learn about the science of mental health conditions. Focus on the positive. Provide support. Share about existing resources. Include everyone. Provide the correct information to others who have misconceptions about substance use disorders and mental illnesses. For information on a variety of resources, visit Recovery Connections and the Mental Health Association of Central Florida's websites.
Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our distinguished guests. I'm Dr. Ethan Johnson for Healthy Seminole. See you next time.